All righty.
Hey everyone.
Hi, Margie.
Hello.
Here we go.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. Try to drink a lot. All right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started in our training on puberty. So we are going to go over everything from puberty development. We're going to go into some risk factors. We're going to talk about some of the complexities of puberty. So we're going to talk about menstruation. We're going to talk about ejaculation. We're going to talk about all the fun terms. So if you have any little ears, please give them that heads up. They may want to step out of the room, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Oops, sorry, guys. Okay, so our dentist day, we're going to go over a quick introduction. Like I said, we're going to talk about the timeline of development. We're going to go from 0 to 18 years old. We're going to talk about puberty. We're going to talk about autistic relationships. We're going to briefly discuss sexual behavior analysis. We will talk about risk factors and trauma for you guys to be aware of. And then there will be a summary and questions at the very end. Okay, so in this introduction, this presentation is going to cover mature content. We are going to talk about physical and sexual development. We're going to talk about anatomical body parts, menstruation, masturbation, sexual acts. This presentation is not going to go over any type of social, religious, or cultural values related to the above content. It's mainly just to talk about the facts and statistics related to puberty. So starting off with our timeline, we're going to go from a couple of different chunks. So we have 0 to 6 years old. During this time, your child may begin to explore body parts, and that includes body parts of themselves and others. So this may be them being interested in other people's body parts. It may be like their closest friend, it may be a sibling. They are interested in exploring bodies and the differences between different bodies. So there is a little bit of emphasis on sexual body parts because it has more sensation. It's a little bit different. You don't see it when you're walking to the store, when you're walking across the street from someplace. So the emphasis on sexual body parts include penis, the anus, the vagina, all the funny parts. So also during this age, we want to start talking about the anatomical body parts and function of the body parts. So that way they understand, like, your penis is used to do this, your vagina is used for this. So that way they understand what the body parts are by name, and they also understand what the body parts are used for. Especially with our kiddos on the spectrum, they like facts. So rather than calling a penis a wee-wee, instead of calling it a funny name, make sure you're calling it a penis and what it's used for. By teaching the anatomical body parts and the functions, you do reduce some maladaptive sexual behaviors because they understand what the body part is used for. They know the name of it. So it's not a fun thing. It is a very natural thing that occurs. And the next chunk of the timeline is 6 to 9 years old. So this is pre-puberty, but they're starting to get some changes happening. So during this time frame, we want to start teaching our kiddos about boundaries, what are public behaviors, what are private behaviors, because our kiddos are starting to have that desire for privacy of their body parts. What I mean by that is that they may not be openly touching themselves here and there. They may not be getting diaper changes as much, so they don't have to have an adult touching them or having their body parts open and exposed. That way they want to be more private, go into the bathroom when they need to, have clothes on, that type of thing. We also want to teach personal hygiene skills. That includes toilet training, that includes proper bathing, that may start including deodorant and a little bit older hygiene skills. During this age, and especially during this frame, there is the potential access of online pornography and sexual information because kiddos have access to the internet, which some of us may not have had as we were young, but now it's very easy to be on the tablet or be at school and accidentally accessing inappropriate websites at a young age. And when kiddos do access pornography in a younger age, maybe before they should, it can accelerate the timeline of sexual behaviors because they're being introduced to a lot of sexual behaviors happening, and this could increase and speed up them wanting to do those things on their own. And again, closer to the end of this, around the 9-year-old age frame, we do start having sexual hormones being produced. Going in, we have 9 to 13 years old, and this is where we're going to start talking about your kiddo starting to get those feelings of attraction. They may start having their first relationships or attempts at relationships. They may start having their first kiss, have like a boyfriend or girlfriend. They may also engage in a lot of frequent masturbation during this age. There is also some development of gender identity and gender roles, which can be talked about in more detail with your family and your kiddo, but these do start to arise between 9 and 13 years old. Further, 13 to 8-year-olds, as your kiddo is becoming an adult, they may start questioning values and family dynamics because they are getting that reinforcement and that information from their peers and the internet and from their own personal experience, and may question a little bit more of what parents' ideas are on what's right and wrong. During this time frame, they are also starting to make their own sexual decisions. So they are either being rewarded or they're being punished by their environment and by the natural sensations. So if they are accessing pornography, then they may be reinforced by that because they're able to access it on their own. Same thing if they start touching themselves or they're a little bit older, 13 to 18, and they have a partner who is touching them, that natural sensation may continue to keep those behaviors occurring, and they may make more and more sexual decisions. Some common sexual behaviors during this age frame is oral sex, vaginal sex, anal sex, which is occurring more in later generations, which is why I wanted to put this out here. There are some experimentation with same sex. There is digital sexual behavior, so that includes sending pictures, that includes pornography, that includes sexing, everything that can be happening between the 13 and 18-year-old time frame.
I need a drink.
Okay. Going into puberty. So these are a quick list of some very important skills to teach your kiddo when it comes to puberty. So like we discussed, anatomy and the function of those body parts, teaching them what they are used for and what they are not used for. Understanding boundaries, what is a public behavior versus what is a private behavior. Having them start to take care of themselves as much as possible, their hygiene and their personal care, including brushing their hair, including washing their body, everything that relates to their hygiene. Also starting to discuss some relationship dynamics. What are the relationships of friendships? What are the relationships between a romantic partner? What are the relationships of a sexual partnership? Understanding what those dynamics look like and what the differences are between a friendship relationship and a sexual relationship. So with puberty, it is obviously a touchy subject between different families and what your specific beliefs are. So the best ways to teach these skills are to model, so show your kiddo how to do all these things on your own. That way you are teaching them the way you would like to follow your belief system. You also want to utilize social stories, which can be books, it can be videos, and I do have some references later on in the presentation for you guys, and also visuals and checklists. Because again, this is something that you can't just have them go willy-nilly, try it on their own, because you want to keep them safe. You also want to make sure that they're learning these things safely and correctly. So you want to use as many teaching strategies as possible, but understanding it's a touchy subject. So some things may be appropriate to use, some may not be, but try to keep it in a safe environment for your kiddo. Okay, so going into a little bit more detail of puberty with males. So typically puberty hits males around 9 to 13 years old. Some of the physical changes that you will see are the penis and the testes start to increase in size. You will start seeing pubic hair grow above the penis area, and then on the scrotum, they will also start ejaculating. So in the whole body, you may start seeing a growth spurt around 12 to 15 years old. This includes an increase in weight and size. With men, they have more of a muscle definition, so you may see that type of development as well. Some common puberty concerns when males start hitting puberty, for men and women, it is body odor, acne, weight gain, emotions, because during puberty, there are a lot of emotional swings happening. With men specifically, there may be some concerns with like penis size, masturbation, erections, and ejaculation. Now going into females. So females do hit puberty a little bit later. So they can start hitting puberty anywhere between 8 to 14 years old. The main physical changes are breast development, pubic hair beginning to grow on the labia, which is the outside of the vagina, and later on to the pubic area and under the armpits. Their growth spurt typically occurs between 9 and 16-year-olds, depending on when they start developing their breasts and whenever they start menstruating. So the growth spurt typically occurs 1 to 2 years before menstruation. So if your kiddo is starting to hit puberty, understand that in 1 to 2 years, they'll probably start menstruating as well. That growth spurt typically occurs 2 years after breast development. Some common puberty concerns when it comes to females, of course, same thing as boys, body odor, acne, weight gain, emotions, and then specifically with females, breast size, masturbation, and vaginal discharge on top of menstruation, which we'll talk about in a moment. So also a few things I wanted to point out is everyone's puberty looks a little bit different, but here are a couple of signs that you may need to take your kiddo in to see a medical professional. So for males, it is if puberty begins before 9 years old, or they do not show signs of puberty by 14 years old. If your boy is showing either one of those, seek medical professional guidance. For females, if puberty begins before 7 years old, if they do not show signs of puberty by 13 years old, or they do not start menstruation within 5 years of breast development, seek medical guidance. Okay, so specifically with autism and puberty, unfortunately, there is not a lot of research in this field, so I do not have a lot of information to give you. So we do understand in the field that there are some difficulties when it comes to autism and teaching puberty skills. So some of the research suggests that comorbidity, so anything that your kiddo has in addition to autism, so they have ADHD, if they have anxiety, if they have a GI issue, any other thing happening may be negatively affected by puberty and those hormonal changes. Individuals diagnosed with autism tend to have more challenges than individuals without autism when it comes to puberty and understanding all the changes happening within and outside of themselves. And there is some research, this research that I found was old, so it was around 1980s when it came out, so it is dated, but it did suggest that skills may decline and behaviors may increase during puberty. And again, those are related to the hormonal changes, not understanding what's happening, and maybe not having the skills necessary to talk about it and understand why all these changes are happening and how to deal with them.
That makes sense.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about specifically menstruation. So ideally, we want to start teaching these skills to our girls before they hit puberty. Give them as much of a heads up as possible so that way when it does happen, it's not scary. They're not worried about them dying. They don't know what's happening. They kind of have an idea of the basics of what's going on. So the best way to teach how to take care of yourself when you're menstruating is to use social stories. That can be a book, which I have 3 books listed up on the right-hand side that go into menstruating, giving visuals and creating a story along this puberty. You can also model using dolls depending on where your kiddo's at. If they can learn from using them, use them. That way it's detached from the situation and you can show them and they can show you how to do all these skills with the doll before they have to do it on themselves. And also practice those life skills if you're able to model it for your kiddo, if you are comfortable with that, if you have someone in your life that is willing to do that with your kiddo, show them the step-by-step process so that they see this is what happens. Here's how to do it. So that way they're seeing it from like firsthand perspective. So on the left-hand side, there's a quick visual aid of just how to change out a menstruation pad. That would be good for some kiddos to learn through. Some kiddos may do best with books. Some kiddos may do best with dolls or seeing their mother do it. That's okay. Whatever works best for your kiddo. Here are a couple of examples. Okay, now we're going to talk about masturbation, which is equally important for the men as it is for the women. So the individual beliefs and values of masturbation will guide teaching this skill. If one family believes XYZ about masturbation, then they need to teach that skill in that context. If another family believes ABC, then they're going to teach those type of skills to their kiddo. And it's okay that they're different, just as long as you are teaching the skill that is important and relevant to you and your family. So to start teaching this skill, you really want to give your child an appropriate time and place to masturbate. So you want them to understand that they have the availability to have alone time, provide that alone time. If that is adding it to their daily schedule of, okay, between 5 to 6, you get alone time where you can go into your room, you can go into the designated space, and you have that hour to yourself. Also establish appropriate places where you are comfortable and your family is comfortable with your kiddo masturbating here, there, or anywhere else. And also understanding you cannot do this in these locations. So the best way to do this is to utilize social stories, which these are 2 books that teach masturbation from a male and female perspective. You can use visual aids. You can also, if it is appropriate for your family, if it's okay with the parents can teach and show the different tools and methods to teach the skill. So one thing that I did want to provide is a safe and appropriate pornography website. So this site is called...
Does someone have a question? No? Okay, sorry.
So this website provides appropriate pornography along with other sexual development resources for your kiddos, rather than them going on Pornhub, which is not accurate in any way. Giving them a website that is safe, that is more appropriate, is more realistic, and also tailors to any type of fantasy or any type of specification that your kiddo may be interested in. I do not have the website pulled up, but I did want to point it out to you guys so that way you can view it, see if it's something you would like your kiddo to be interested in. It goes through everything from like different masturbation toys. It goes through different stories. It goes through understanding relationship dynamics. It goes through understanding how to take care of yourself, like washing properly. So it is a really great, appropriate site than Pornhub.
So what I want to do after this is over, after I have many drinks, and we get, through this topic, a friend of mine who has an adult son,
Mhm.
and she has a lot of stories for this topic.
Yep.
I want to go through these things with her and see if they would have been helpful to her, or if she kind of, how that she handled it and how different it is, because I think this is fascinatingly anxiety inducing. And yes. And I don't know how you're doing it with a straight face, because I can't keep my face straight. I can't even say it. So I cannot wait to ask some of the parents who have their adults. And this is still probably a tool that they could, if they haven't used it yet with their adult children, they could use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Holy smokes. Whew. But yeah, I'm red head to toe already.
So I have another one for you.
Okay.
So this one is a little bit less involved in the sexual aspect of it, but this does provide videos. It provides short stories. It does provide some engagement for kiddos to learn about different elements of puberty. So that does include relationships. It does include like first dates. It goes into maybe having a fight with your parent and like how to deal with that. It goes into more of the relationship dynamics versus the other one, which is mainly tailored towards sexual behavior. So both of these are available for you to go and look at on your own, but I did want to provide something that is safe and appropriate and somewhat correct than other websites you can find on Google.
And these will also be on the resource tab on our website.
Absolutely. Okay.
I can't.
So I'm briefly going to go over some autistic relationships and just a couple things to be aware of. So one thing that I think a lot of people do, and I even do myself, which I'm trying to actively work on, is understanding that your child diagnosed with autism is going to grow up into an autistic adult, which means that as an adult, they have certain experiences they may want. They have different desires. They may want to have a wife and kid in the future, but if you treat them as a child for their entire life, they're not going to understand that. They're not going to know that that is something that they're able to do because you treat them, or their provider treats them, the society treats them as a child. They don't see them as an 18-year-old adult with adult desires and adult wants and adult experiences. Another thing I want to talk about is in the autism community, there is a high prevalence of LGBTQIA. So with some research, it does show that 68% of people diagnosed with autism identify somewhere on that spectrum. There is also 55% of a randomized study, which showed that kiddos or adults with autism do have same gender attractions. This does not necessarily mean that they will become LGBTQIA, but it does mean that they do have those attractions at some point in their lives. Another thing is that sex is a natural and normal behavior for all humans, and regardless of different abilities, they should not be restricted or denied from having those relationships or having that behavior.
It just kills me.
So I'm very briefly going to talk about sexual behavior analysis and why this is important, especially in this topic. So your child's behavior provider, their ABA technician, their B.C.B.A, their behavior therapist, whoever it may not be enough to teach the complexities of sexuality. So unless they are specifically educated and trained, your typical behavior provider can only support puberty and sexual behavior to a point. However, sexual behavior analysis can go further. They are specifically trained in everything sexual. So this is very similar to your primary care physician. You do not want them to be your cancer provider. You do not want them to be your gynecologist because they don't have all that specific training. They can help you to a point and point you in the right direction, but then you do need a specialist. And this is where SBAs do come into the picture. So I do have a quick list of some big topics that if your kiddo is experiencing this, to contact a sexual behavior analysis. So this includes impulsive or compulsive sexual behaviors, understanding the mechanics of solo and or partnered sex, understanding and supporting the LGBTQIA, especially if the family does not fully understand that and fully have all of the ins and outs of it. If your kiddo is showing sexual behavior towards family members or individuals who are under or over their age. So if your kiddo is 6 and they're attracted to people who are 18 years or older, you want to talk to a professional about it. Same thing, if your kiddo is 18 and they're interested in people who are 83, you may want to talk to someone who is specialized in this. And also, if your kiddo is diagnosed with a sexual condition, you may want to contact an SBA. On the bottom right side, I do have a couple of resources for sexual behavior analysis that it's easy to contact, and you're able to get some information from their websites. So we have Empowered Center, Sex Continued ED, we have Career on the Spectrum, and we have Dance Behavioral Solutions. So those are, if someone you need to reach out to now, here are a couple of resources for you. So the reason why we want to talk about puberty with our kiddos as soon as possible is to avoid 3 common risk factors. So with kiddos with any type of disability, there is a much higher rate of sexual abuse. And this occurs because they may not be able to provide reports about sexual abuse due to communication deficits, or they may be unaware that what they are experiencing, which is sexual abuse, they don't understand that it's wrong. They don't understand that it's sexual abuse. So we do want to talk about sexuality, what is right, what is wrong, so that way if something is happening to them that is wrong, they are able to report that to the correct person. We also want to talk about their health. So sex education is needed to promote health and hygiene. We want to prevent any type of disease. We want to prevent pregnancy unless it is wanted. And we also want to increase the likelihood of reporting pain or injury. If your kiddo does not understand sexual health and how to properly clean themselves once they hit puberty, then you risk getting an infection. You may risk pain that they don't report on for years, and then it becomes a much bigger issue. Again, if they don't have sex education, they may not know proper ways to prevent pregnancy, and then you have another case on your hands. Another thing is we want to reduce inappropriate behavior because they're trying to access romantic or sexual relationships. To them, it is not inappropriate behavior. They are just trying to get what they want. But to someone who doesn't have that training or who may not be aware of the situation, they may see someone who could qualify under like pedophile behavior, and they are not. They are trying to get these desires met, but they're showing it in an inappropriate way because they don't understand. So that is 3 big risk factors and why puberty and understanding sexuality and understanding sexual health is so important to teaching our kiddos. Last thing that I wanted to bring up is some warning signs that your kiddo may have experienced some type of sexual trauma. The reason I want to bring this up is because we do send our kiddos off to other people. We do send them off to school where sexual trauma can happen on vans and just going to the park with their friends. There are so many unfortunately opportunities where trauma can occur. So I did want to give you guys a couple warning signs, just so if you see this behavior, you can maybe ask more questions and see if something is going on, so that way you can handle it as soon as it becomes an issue. So if your kiddo is using any type of inappropriate items to penetrate themselves, that may be a sign that they are experiencing some type of sexual trauma. Again, depending on the age, depending on how much they understand about sex and masturbation, some items are completely appropriate for penetration. So if you're young, if you're in that like 0 to 6 age range, maybe slightly older, and you're playing doctor, that's an appropriate moment where penetration may happen, and it's very natural and very common for all kiddos to do that. That's not a trauma-induced penetration harm. So that would be an appropriate manner. However, if your kiddo is using something that is completely inappropriate to penetrate themselves, then that may be a risk factor. For our females, any type of vaginal penetration, unless they are past the point where you have taught them about sex, you have taught to them about vaginal sex, they understand what that means and what that looks like. For children, vaginal penetration is not modeled. There's no reason for it to be modeled. You're not using it for to check your temperature. You're not using it at 6 years old to put in a tampon. There's no reason that vaginal penetration should be occurring in childhood, especially early childhood. And then also they may have seen the vaginal penetration through pornography. Again, if they're really young, that can cause them to increase in their sexual development. So we do want to monitor that closely. Also, other signs of potential sexual trauma is highly sexualized behavior. So they are performing very sexual acts. They are requesting sexual acts by name, or they are making comments of secrecy. So they're saying, please don't say this, or if you tell on me, I have to do X, Y, Z. They heard that from an adult. As a child, as someone who may be taken advantage of, they don't understand that what's happening is wrong. But if they start repeating those comments, then someone who is involved does know that's wrong and is trying to keep it a secret. So these are just a couple of red flags to look out for. All right, summary. So puberty is a challenging time for everyone, regardless of ability. Everyone in this call has experienced puberty, and it was difficult for everyone. So supporting your child as they develop into adults is absolutely critical. And sometimes we don't have the answers. So utilize your behavioral services for the basics, and then contact a specialist if needed and when needed. And overall, statistics do show that supporting and acceptance is essential to your child's success. So even though it is a difficult topic, even though it is very uncomfortable to talk about, it is more important to talk about it than to not talk about it and have your child potentially be in a unfortunate situation or put themselves in harm's way without them knowing and without you guys knowing as well. And now I'm going to open up the floor to questions. All the hard stuff is over.
We can stop sharing.
Okay.
There we go.
Stop share and stop recording.
Yeah.